Hey guys and gals, what's going on? Happy Father's Day. I'm excited to bring this really timely episode to you guys. Many of you got everyone has been watching like the When They See Us. There's been lots of conversations centered around issues that are affecting men. And I think that while there are other great times in the world, and excuse me, sometimes I'm looking around because y'all looking at your comments. Thanks, Elizabeth, for checking it out. Uh, while there are other conversations, and I'm not going to minimize any conversation, today is Father's Day. So happy Father's Day. Shouts out to all the men who are out here taking care of their families, doing what you're expected to do, what you were committed to do. And I mean, this is your day. This is your day. I never hear more arguments than arguments from men who feel slighted that Mother's Day is like this huge thing, and they feel like Father's Day is a small thing. I'm just turning up my mic, hoping you guys can hear me. So so we got a lot to talk about. I got my cell phone out because I'm expecting you guys to be interactive. I want to hear your questions. I got some amazing brothers on, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about all the stuff that you want to know as it relates to spirituality, as it relates to style, as it relates to your finances, as it relates to your mental health and your physical health, and just getting it all together. So take a look at the promo, and I'm going to get everything going, and I'll see you in a second. All right, guys, welcome back. I hope that's a little bit better. I was adjusting my mic, so hopefully everything sounds better. Like I said, that's my cell phone right here that you see on the live. Let's check in, see who's here. Dynasty, Patrick, Kenyatta. Thanks you guys for checking it out. Chris, my brother Chris, Corey, Derek, Elizabeth. Thank you guys so much. So yeah, Elizabeth, you're ready with your popcorn in hand. Sister, I always feel like this is like a brand new experience every time that I do it. So either ways, I'm not gonna like belabor like what's going on. All right. So I got three really great brothers on. My first brother is Pastor Jonathan. He is out of Atlanta. He is the pastor of a church. I love this brother. I've heard his message. He's the pastor of Lagua Life Church. And in a day and age where we're reaching so many different people in so many different ways, this brother is really pushing the envelope. He's not one of those mega churches, follow me, do what I say, not what I do. This brother is living and breathing his message, not just from who he is today, but who he has been. In a time where we've talked on previous episodes about things like church hurt, and things, people feeling ostracized in church. I love the fact that this brother is not being some of those things that's been problematic in the conversation, right? And getting brothers into church. The second brother is Mr. Deontay Tompkins. He's a dynamic financial advisor, and he's passionate about his community. He hails from Detroit, Michigan. He helps his clients reach financial security through implementing creative strategies. Y'all know I forget, so I had to write some of this down. Uh, he's a millennial brother. Over his tenure in the government, he was hired and mentored over 1,000 young professions and high school students. Deontay got his undergraduate degree from Northwood University and his master's degree from Central Michigan. He was recognized as Crane's 20 in their 20s Oakland County Executive Elite 40 Under 40, and by the Detroit Free Press and Metropolitan Affairs Coalition as the Dave Bing Future Leader Award for his work across the region. Deontay is married to Crystal Tompkins, and they have two beautiful children. And if you haven't seen it, check this brother out on Instagram. I'm gonna pull up his Instagram a little bit later. They're two amazing kids. So Caleb and Connie, Corinne, sorry. In their spare time, they enjoy traveling and making as many memories as possible for their family. And my last, but definitely not my least, by the way, is Robert Pauly. Robert Pauly is like one of the most amazing brothers out here in the fashion industry and in style and in representations of the community. So when I was thinking about like who I, as you all know in social media, there could be lots of people to follow. But this brother, he is really doing it. He's a men's style expert. He's a custom clothier and he's a published photographer. As somebody who is also an entrepreneur, all of this is me today. So this is a one-man show. This man is a one-man show. And he's not just a one-man show for himself, but he's a one-man show for his clients. He's the owner of Wealthy Lifestyle, a lifestyle services brand. His business delivers one-of-a-kind experiences. Trust me, by the way, I know from experience, tailored to make you look, feel, and be the best version of yourself. Since he was a kid, Robert has enjoyed the art of dressing up and has built a vast knowledge of men's style, coupled with a natural ability of knowing what looks good on himself and others. He's grown a social media following by modeling his own clothing designs and sharing men's style and grooming tips with his followers. Prior to taking the leap into entrepreneurship, Robert worked in finance for 10 years and he's lived in Brazil, China, Hong Kong, and Spain. In addition to reaching over 100,000 people on social media, Robert frequently speaks to high school and college students on the importance of your appearance to your success in life. Robert is a native New Yorker, big ups to New York, and he lives in Harlem, New York, which is a very changing demographic. So like I said, I won't belabor these brothers. Please make sure you call in, you FaceTime in. Here is the contact information. All right, so you can FaceTime me at WWillis24@AOL.com. I got the cell phone out. I can bring you on. Also, you can Google Hangout or call in, and I can patch you through because we want to hear from you. This isn't a show if you're not a part of it. Okay. All right. So I mean, without further ado, I'm going to bring these brothers in so that we can talk. Hey, gentlemen.
Hey,
Do I got
Hey,
everybody in? Are we live? Are we? Are we
we live.
live?
we
Thank,
live, baby. We ready.
thank you guys for your patience. We got some people checking in. Kenyatta says amen. Derek sounds good. Derek shouts out for Detroit. Uh, so Deontay, you got some of your followers from Detroit on today for the live. Okay. All right, I hear you, baby. I hear you, baby. Do it. All right, so we're gonna start with Robert. Robert, introduce yourself. Tell people about yourself and what it is that you do.
So firstly, thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
I, brother, I hear you loud and clear.
All right now. So firstly, thank you for having me. So my name is Robert Poley III. I'm also known as the Wealthy Guy. So as Wesley mentioned, I run a lifestyle services brand, and I create unique experiences for people to look and feel good about themselves. So I've been doing a lot, as he mentioned, on social media. That's my primary platform where I reach people. And my brand is really, it's not so much about financial wealth. Of course, yes, I'm selling products, but it's more so about wealth inside, right? Feeling good, loving yourself, loving others, giving back to the community as well. So these are all things that in my sharing of information, I am trying to instill in others.
Awesome, awesome. I'm just like trying. You know how these things go. So Thank you, brother, for doing all that you do on social media, for being a visible uh, pinnacle, I think, for like men's style and entrepreneurship and taking risks. We're going to go to you, Deontay, and then we'll talk to Pastor Jonathan Barker.
All right. Thank you for that introduction as well. Very excited to be sharing the stage with some phenomenal brothers and obviously enlightening the community a little bit about what we do. So, like I said before, Deontay Tompkins from Detroit, Michigan. I'm a business owner in the financial services arena, financial planner, and helping to connect the dots to help people reach financial security. My background is in community. It's always been for my entire professional career. My why is simply to again take the anxiety off of finances for people to help them reach their goals way beyond their wildest imaginations. I often like to say to blow their money goals out of the water. So I'm excited again to be here today to share knowledge. I think is one of the things that can exponentially change somebody's life when you have the correct knowledge. So very excited to be here, Wesley, and obviously I want to entertain anybody's questions as well. So make sure you guys shoot those in.
Thank you, brother, because you represent something that a lot of us struggle, even with myself. I still struggle with finances. Those that know me, I mean, growing up in a family where we weren't really sometimes taught like what they call millennial wealth or generational wealth or how to prepare for your family. One of the things I love about you is being a brother in your 20s, seeing you connect with your family and preaching that message, because at a day and age where our iPhones cost like, 1,500 bucks. What does that mean for your family? And I love the message that you send out, not just, doing your own thing at Northwestern Mutual, but just what you do visibility wise. So thank you.
Thank you.
Pastor, you are an amazing brother. You're last, but you're definitely not least. So tell people about yourself and let's go. Oh, brother, I can't hear you. I.
Oh, there it is. All right, my name is Pastor Jonathan Baker. Man, I'm based out of Atlanta. I was originally born and raised in South Carolina. Spent some time, living in New York as well. So I definitely got some things from the city. Definitely got mad love for NY. I'm just here, man, to exhibit God's love here on earth, man. Like you were speaking on earlier. I come from a place of being it, knowing about God and the things of God, and experiencing church hurt and things of that nature. And at one point, I really didn't want to have anything to do with God. And one day I had an epiphany. God really spoke to me, and I began to realize that, as my mother used to tell me earlier in life, you have to be the change that you want to see. So my goal here right now is definitely inside of the community and across the world is to remind people that we are, number one, we are humans. It doesn't matter your race, your color, your background, your ethnicity, but we're all human, and we have to treat each other with love and respect, and definitely exhibit the same love that God gives us, because that's what it's all about, exhibiting God's love to one another and being a blessing to others, as God blesses us. So that's what I'm here to do, man, and kind of take that unorthodox traditional viewpoint out of the churches and let people understand that God said, come as you are. You don't come as you are to stay as you are, but you come as you are so you can eventually change and be better than you were when you came in.
Right, exactly. And that's like one of the things that I feel from your message, brother. And I think that the
Yes.
people who are in your congregation, I've watched your YouTube channel, and
Oh,
I
wow.
see kind of
Thank you.
like the energy of what happens, like with the people who are engaged in your work. So thank you for like doing like some very unorthodox things in a very orthodox profession, right? Because people still
Yes.
think of church as like this brick mortar pews. You got your first lady, you have your deacons, you have
Yes.
all of these things that kind of can be shunned or be kind of looked as barriers to especially
Right.
people of color sometimes, especially even more so brothers,
That's right.
that now that they can take the message other ways. So we're gonna
That's
start
right.
by, and like I said ladies, gentlemen, take the time to send out your questions. We'll be taking questions and answering some of those. But I sent out some questions so that we can, get the party started for folks. I'm going to put that up. Let's see. Right. So the call-in options for you guys, it should be right there on the screen. Take a look at it. And so the first question is, as men of color, right? We're subject matter experts in all our fields. Like as a therapist, as a nurse, I'm not gonna lie to you, Robert. I'm not great at style. You know that. Tell me, are there any? You know that, brother. We've had conversations. Are there any special nurturing or engaging practices you do to reach other Black men?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, it is really just letting people know that a lot of times people are, they'll say, I'm not great at style, or I don't know how to dress, or these things because they may have not been, exposed to some of the things that I've seen before. Um, so what I do is let people know that it's okay, right? And it's okay to start at whatever point in your life with the way that you look, right? Because for me, it's not just about, you know, putting on nice suits and putting on a tie and looking sharp. It's more so about building that confidence so that you can take that and go out into the world and do the things that you want to do in life, right? And a lot of times it starts within. So my message always to people is you got to feel good about yourself inside first, even before you think about, putting on your clothes to feel good on the outside. So my, the nurturing thing that I give to people is that, hey man, you're great, right? Like this is your starting point and that's okay. But let's work together to get you to be the man who you see yourself as.
Right, right. That's
It's
dope.
beautiful.
That's dope. Deontay, same question. Is as someone who deals in finances, and one of the most sensitive things for brothers can be is about their money. Whether it be our idea that we should have more, or whether we fronting from the gram, or whether we're doing whatever, or whether I'm struggling with not having everything that I need financially. Like that could be really still challenging for brothers. Like, what do you do to connect to brothers, to connect communities that look like you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think first and foremost, I'm in a very unique situation. Being an advisor, on my level, that's a minority. It's not a lot of us out there. So I'm big on the education component because, again, we're all trying to build generational wealth. And one thing I like to educate people on is for many of us, we're on generation number one. And I like having that legacy kind of conversation with people because it's a great starting point that puts it all in perspective. And the legacy conversation goes a little something like this. I may sit down with somebody and I say, listen, I would love to get to know a little bit more about you. Can you name your great grandparents on both sides of your family? And then I sit back and I wait. And the reality is, 99% of people can't. And then I like to take a little deep dive into that and say, let's talk about it. Why do you think that is? And it's not that great grandma or great granddad weren't great people, but the reality is, unless you have a last name like Kraft or Rolls Royce or a major name that you're probably never going to forget because they built up this business and they built up this legacy, or if you don't come from a family that has an estate that's getting passed along over time, you're going to have to be that change. So when you really put it in perspective, knowing that you're just a few generations from being forgotten, I'm like, let's talk about it. What do you want to own from that perspective? And a lot of times, within our community, we have to deal with a affluent spending mentality. Knowing the difference between being able to afford something versus being able to buy something. And again, we have to kind of take it down to its bare bones with people. But I like what the gentleman said before me. It's not about where you are today, it's about really outlining that vision and talking about where you want to go. You know, you got to meet people where they are, but you have to have a good strategy to move forward over time. So again, I kind of live off of three principles. You know, if you don't take a step forward, then you're going to be in the same spot. If you don't go after what you want, then you're never going to get it. And if you don't ask, then the answer is always going to be no. So again, in our community, it's just letting people know it's okay, but let's talk about it. Let's get it out there, and let's, you know, again, push that needle forward to get us to where we want to be.
Right, right. Kenyatta says you better speak, by the way, because thank you, Kenyatta. Yes, I mean finance is a really touchy subject. Even still, it's crazy that we know we need money, we want money. Social media plays a big
Yeah.
part of that, and we're going to talk about that later because that was one of you guys' questions. But
Yep.
yeah, finances, brother. I can't wait to talk to you for you to talk to everybody else more. Pastor Jonathan Baker, uh, being a brother who grew up in the church and have some incredibly religious family. By the way, I see my mom checking in. I see some family checking in. I grew up apostolic,
Yeah.
and that in itself, women don't wear pants. Women don't, do this, don't cut their hair. Men don't do, there's a lot of stuff that baggage that all of us either our grandmother and our grandparents took us to church and whatever. Talk to us about how you reach brothers of color, the community that looks like you. How do you nurture them? How do you engage them? How do you bring them into spiritual health, and how does that connect for us being better brothers and better men?
Well, you said it earlier, man. A lot of us, man, we grow up as the word religious, and one thing that I always like to break down to people, when they come to me is that, you'll minister to someone, and the first thing that they'll tell you when you say that you're a pastor is, well, I'm not religious. I'm not really into that religious stuff. And I let them know off rip, like, I'm not religious either, because religion is man-made, and having a personal relationship with God has nothing to do with religion. It's based on, really understanding the word and being able to diagnose it for yourself in order to get a better understanding of how we should live here on earth in order to be pleasing towards God. So the whole, like, the religious thing with women shouldn't wear pants, and if you come into church with shorts on, you got to leave, and all these things, the earrings, no earrings, and all these different things, man. It was more of a thing that people put in place to try to, like, regulate and keep people rigorous, and everything must be done decently and in order. But I try to remind brothers, especially, that I can relate to, my brown and black brothers, is that, you got to understand, like, there's more to life than what you can see on the surface. One of my biggest things that I try to get into my generation is that life is more than the superficial things, having the fast cars and a lot of money and, popularity and charisma and things of that nature, because although those are good additions or add-ons, realistically, it doesn't profit you anything if you gain the world and lose your soul. So you definitely want to keep in mind, I always tell my people, like, establishing a personal relationship with God, like the brothers before me said, it has nothing to do with how you started and what your people did. It's about what you make a choice to do right here, right now. Because if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things have passed away. All things have become new. So we're not here to condemn you based on the things you did in your past. I'm just here to help you make conscientious decisions right now that's going to help you better your future. Because realistically, without God in the picture, there's no way for life to go the way it should go. You're going to operate at a lower version of yourself instead of the highest version of yourself.
Right, right. You said an amazing part of that. One of the things, brother, is being a young brother, being what they call millennial generation, whatever labels they put on us, right? You
Right.
talk about like your history, and people will look at you and be like, "Oh, he got tattoos, and he got like this and
Yes.
that."
Yes.
How do you deal with that? How do you talk to brothers who may also have the same thing, have ink, and just be plain ordinary dope brothers who do great
Right.
things, but because what we see, and we're going to talk a little bit about when they see us and if how
Uh-huh.
that possibly impacted you guys. But when they see us, or when we see one another, he got a tattoo, and he got a tattoo, and he got this. How do you connect with those brothers and help them overcome some of that stigma within our own community, with the others who look at us and say,
Yes.
"Oh, automatically judge a book by its cover," so to speak?
Well, I'm glad you touched on that, man. That's probably one of the biggest parts of my testimony is that I come from a religious background, and then when I end up going out into adulthood on my own, man, I ended up getting involved in a lot of street life, gang life, a lot of gang culture, drug life, all of these things, man. And now some of the effects of what I did, the ink is still here, and gang tattoos, all kinds of things. So when people see that, like you said, the others, they look and they go automatically just assume like, oh, he's a whatever, he's this, he's that, but I talk to my brothers that are, of like-minded kindred spirit that have been through these same avenues. I let them know, like, look, man, the choices that you've made in your past don't determine your future, because the only thing we have is the present and the future. The past is something that we cannot go back into, and there's nothing that we can change back there. And what I always remind people of is, when Jesus, gave his life for us, man, and allow love to be the course of action and grace and salvation, your grace has nothing to do with what you can personally do or the merit of what you can say in order to obtain grace. It's based on love alone. So God's love is the only thing that's the X factor for us. And all you have to do from that point is accept the love willfully, and move forward in that manner. So having ink and having a past, I tell people, man, that's your testimony. Your testimony is what's going to bring somebody else closer to God, not anybody else's testimony or anybody else's conception of what they think God is.
Right, right. Kenyatta mentioned he gonna make me go back to church. Yes, Kenyatta. And I think one of the great things I like about you, Jonathan, is you make a lot of brothers rethink those old misconceptions or those old experiences, not even misconceptions, experiences that made them say, you know what, church isn't for me, or organized
Right.
religion or organized spirituality isn't for me. And that was what my grandmother used to do. That was my mother used to do. That's not my generation. That's one of the great
Right.
things that you do for
Yeah, God
me,
bless you.
for a lot of brothers. So thank you, Kenyatta, for pointing that out. Deontay, I got your wife screaming at me. She can't hear you, brother. Can you speak?
Uh-oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Andrea, can you hear your husband?
Oh,
I turned your mic up, brother, because one thing I do
okay.
know, if you want to have a happy life, you need to have a happy wife.
Have a happy
So
wife.
hopefully,
This is true.
Andrea, you can hear your husband. I don't want no problems. So, brother, are there any special connections to like black and brown men that you can have in your role as a financier? Because a lot of people will say, "Hey, I've watched your feed. One time I saw in your social media feed, you was the only brother in the picture. How do you like manage that? Because you're well spoken, you're versed, but then you got to connect to other brothers in Detroit. And I don't know the numbers of what Detroit brothers look like from a sense of financial wealth. But that being your community, how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Detroit is an interesting place to be, very, very diverse place to be, and one thing that I do is I hold near and dear to my roots. You could catch me in the high schools, talking to the city kids, educating them about finances. You could catch me in the community, educating different groups, different churches. So again, I don't forget my roots. So I think people see me out so much that there's this trust factor, hey, that listen, this guy has my best interest at heart. And I also like to say it's not about what I say. You could just look at my lifestyle and see how I live and see if you want to be a part of that. So one thing that I do though to connect to the community, because it is a close knit community in Detroit, especially young professionals that are either doing well or have aspirations to break their cycles and do well. So again, I'm just a conversationalist, right? Because again, one thing that I know is, again, I'm a legacy guy, so forgive me. I'm gonna be harping on this legacy because it's all we got, right? We definitely strive and we grind for our last name because that's one of the things that will still be here when it's all said and done. So the things that I do are totally about, my family and my kids and showing them something that they haven't been exposed to before. And one thing that I see within the community when I'm talking to my brothers and my sisters in the community, in a perfect world, our grandparents would have did steps 1 through 12, and then our parents would have did steps, they started at 12 and took it to 24, and then we would have got it and started at 24 and took it to 36, and then our kids continue to build. And one thing that I've seen is, the grandparents did 1 through 12. Your parents probably went back, didn't learn from the mistakes, started at 2 and took it to 12. And then we're getting generations that started at 3. And it's like, why? So when I'm educating, again, young professionals, or people that have aspirations of being that, or seasoned professionals and business owners, again, one thing that I like to do is just have real talk. Because I think, if we have this, and I know we're going to get into social media in a second, but when it's fluff that's out there, and again, we're chasing false things, we can't have real dialogue. So when I'm working with the individuals in Detroit and connecting to my brothers that are down here, I'm just like, listen, let's talk about it, because there's no reason that we should be starting all over. It's no reason that we shouldn't be connecting to advance one another as a whole. Why are we all in our own little silos trying to make things happen when we know, again, I'm gonna let Pastor Jay speak on the biblical principles, but forgive me, my father-in-law is a pastor, and my mother and my father are too. But the reality is, the church shouldn't have anything missing, lacking, or broken. So I just think, again, my purpose here on this world is to be the change I want to see in the community. And if it doesn't start with me, then who?
Right, right. Now, brother, one of the things that you talk about, and I'm going to bring us all back on, and maybe y'all can, I just turned on the other side of 40. So the hashtag for your last name, or hustle for your last name. Tell us about that movement, because that's one of the millennial things that I've seen you brothers out here doing, sisters out here doing, and I think it's an amazing thing to have these social media movements that talk about family. But explain it to us, for some of us who don't know about it.
Yeah, so again, when we talk about hustling for your last name or grinding for your last name, essentially we're talking about building, right? We're talking about having something that, again, is going to last through generations. We're talking about, the power of representing in a way that, again, my son, his possibilities that he's had. And again, it's not saying my parents weren't great and my grandparents weren't great, because they were. They did what they could. They put us in a position to be better than what they were. But at the end of the day, when I think about my son specifically, I got a 3.5-year-old little boy. Again, I bring him to my office to show him what a life of a business owner looks like, so he can see what the finances of a business looks like, so he can step into a meeting at 3.5 and understand how he's supposed to look. Because, one thing that we know, right, wrong, or indifferent, sometimes just as a person of color, you may have to be twice as good just to be in that same room. And again, we know that, those are the realities that we're dealing with. And again, raising a young man in this culture, in this generation, you have to really teach and show how to move differently. And again, I take that to heart. So this is, today being Father's Day. Again, I am so grateful for being a dad. There are many people that want to be fathers that, haven't been blessed in that way quite yet. So I take this seriously. So when I talk about my last name, and again, knowing that we a few generations typically from being forgotten, I'm doing everything I can with again, God's blessing to push the business forward, though. But again, I'm doing everything I can. So you're going to remember my last name far beyond when I'm gone, because of the legacy and the imprint that I was able to leave, in Detroit and across the country.
Right, right. Thank you, thank you, thank you for taking that second to talk about it, because I'm moving to Robert, and and Robert, most brothers would say, you know what? I look at this guy, I look at his Instagram feed. He got furs, he got on coats, he got on suits. He lives this life that I'm not able to reach. Some brothers may feel that way, but I know a little bit more. Tell us about how you connect to like black and brown brothers who are at all different levels of their look, all different levels of how they feel about themselves, where they are in their career, and what they can afford.
Yep. So one thing that I learned in my career in finance was I used to do a job where I travel all around, and I used to teach people how to be more efficient at work. And what I learned by teaching others is that regardless of if the person is a C-suite executive, or the person that's mopping the floors, talk to everybody the same way, right? So what I do with my Instagram is that I talk to people in layman's terms. You know, it's like, yes, you see me dressed up. Yes, you see me with the furs and this and that and the other, but I am a regular person, right? I'm from New York. I'm from the Bronx, right? You know, I grew up in foster care. I had a mom that was in prison most of my teenage years. You know, like I am them. So, you know, the whole my people, my people, my people thing, it's like I am you and you are me. We are, you know, like we are one. So I always try to make sure that, you know, if you're looking at me, yes, you see, you know, you see me dressed up and looking how I look, but I'm just like you. You know, I am just like you. Um, and even now, right? Like, yes, I've had all these life experiences and have all of this style knowledge and financial knowledge, but you know, to Deontay's point, I didn't when I was a kid, right? Like it came later on in life, and I made a conscious decision to say I want my life to be different than what I've seen. And not only that, I want to share with my community that yes, I come from just the same places that you come from, and this is what I've been able to turn my life um, into. So people message me all the time and they say, how can I be, you know, how can I be rich like you? And I'm like, firstly, I'm not that rich yet. I invest all my money back into my business. And secondly, I am rich in love and I am rich in life before anything. So if you're not rich in those things first, then you're not rich. You're not wealthy. So really, you know, again, just really making sure that when people see me, they see even if they don't look like me, they see themselves in me, and it gives them some inspiration and motivation.
Right, right, brother. I was scrolling up your Instagram feed so people can see the experience if they haven't checked you out already of the wealthy guy. Because I'll be honest, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's all about wealth, right? It's all about money. But
Right.
what I love about one of your T-shirts is your style is your life, or what does it that T-shirt say,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Your style is your life. And there's another one that says live wealthy. It's not just about money.
Right,
Wow, that's beautiful. I need one
right.
of them, brother. That's beautiful.
Exactly, exactly. So looking good and feeling good and mental health is like such an important part of like who we are. So let me see, checking in. Brandon, thanks for checking in. Kelly, thanks for checking in. When you think about like what's wellness, because we all contribute to people's wellness. Brothers contribute to one another's wellness, and there's a triangle. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like what's the foundation? Food, water, and those really things. Oxygen. What do you think? And I mean, you can start. Whoever wants to start is the foundation, and kind of what builds up to being healthy brothers and being healthy men. Whoever can start, feel free. Deontay,
So I
you
guess,
up?
I'll start.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No worries, no worries. So when I think about it in my realm of things, when we talk about finances and we talk about the foundation of what should we doing, what should we be thinking about, I always tell people let's just start off with some goals, right? Personally, professionally, financially. Let's just talk about what do you want, and I think when you're talking to some people, maybe there's somebody that's super selfless, right? So they haven't really looked internally at what they really want, and then what do they want the most and the why, and then based on that we're able to prioritize what's truly important to them. I think foundationally that is super important to build a solid foundation, because without that, again, it's really hard to plan and execute. So oftentimes I like starting there, just what do you want and why? Because I think oftentimes when you get down to the root of it, a lot of what people think they want, truly when they prioritize it out, it isn't truly what's important to them.
Okay, All right. Jonathan, you're on, brother.
Okay, so I kind of do the same thing he said. I try to diagnose what do you think is the root of your issues when it comes to spiritual relationship or the foundation of what I think is successful in the relationship spiritually. I always ask them, what do you feel is the problem? Because usually people come to me asking me for help with problems first before they ask me anything, and they'll ask me, well, what should I do about this, or what does God say about this? And I always ask them, well, what do you feel is the problem? And I allow people to tell me from their perspective of their own lives what they feel is the problem. And based on that, I give a proper diagnosis based on the word of what, the Bible says concerning certain things and help them understand the context. Because the thing is this, I preached a sermon about 2 weeks ago, and it was called God Restores. And one of the things in that is God brings restoration, but before he can bring restoration, we have to see that there is a problem. We have to see that we need some type of restoration to go on in our lives. So the first step is admitting, no matter what field you're in, the first step is admitting. If I go to Deontay and I say, well, I want to become, rich, and I need to figure out how to get my finances in order. Well, obviously I'm coming to him because I need something to change in my finances that I'm not doing right now. So if I come to him thinking I have all the answers, there's no way for him to properly help me unless I admit that I need help. Same thing with Robert. If I go to Robert and I need styling help or styling tips or I need a new wardrobe, I can't go to him expect for him to help me until I admit that I need some help in his department. So the same thing is with God. We can't come to God and ask for help for things, but we're not willing to change the issues at hand. And so I just always ask people to diagnose what they think the problem is. And then once you diagnose that, I say you need to develop your personal relationships. So this involves things like reading the word, being in prayer. And people, like you said, the orthodox thing is prayer. They're like, oh, I got to sit and pray to God for 20, 30 minutes. I tell people, man, God is like at the car dealership. They don't give you options right off the bat on monthly payments. You have to put down a down payment and then they'll give you options. So God expects effort, and then he works with the effort you have and does the rest. And that's what we call walking by faith, not by sight. So it starts with the faith, man. It starts with diagnosing those issues.
Right, right. This is dope. So we've been on for a minute, but I want to talk about one of the biggest movies, biggest mini series. Even though there was an older movie, and I remember seeing it about the Central Park Five. When They See Us, that's been a huge topic, gentlemen, and it not just represents something that happened in the past to brothers who looked like us, but at the same time, I recognize it could have easily been one of us. Um, Talk about kind of like what you took away from that experience and how do people, because I was actually just talking to a coworker last night, and she physically cannot watch it. She emotionally can't watch it. And she identifies from being like a sister who has younger and older brothers of color, of being a I won't say she's bae, of a brother who's been in jail. So she just, I mean, I don't even think she can get past the first 30 minutes of episode one, right? But at the same time, we have to talk about this movie. We have to deal with this, deal with what really happened in our community, no matter where you are, no matter whether you're in New York, no matter where you're in Atlanta, no matter whether you're in a small town where I grew up of Talladega, Alabama. I want to start with you, Robert, about that movie. What are your thoughts if you watched it?
I definitely watched it. We might need more time for me to get all the way into,
Right.
how that movie made, how the series made me feel. One, being a native New Yorker. Two, I live in Harlem. I live literally 5 avenues from Central Park.
Right. Exactly.
So this, there was so many issues and scenarios that played out in the series that I can relate to in my life. I've seen in lives of friends, and family, and it was difficult for me to watch because it did bring back a lot of memories for during when it actually happened. I was a little kid, right, and I could vaguely remember it being, in the paper and it's really big thing. But at that time, I didn't really understand how big it really is. And I just think for, what happened to them and their families and to us as a community as a result of the practices that were going on then, as well as practices that still happen now, and it's just like, at the end of it, I said to myself, okay, one, what can I do to, kind of help to change the narrative of us, right? Because someone looking at me, it's like, okay, non-threatening black man, right? Educated in a suit, but to Pastor Jonathan, him talking about his life before now and the tattoos and this and that and the other, they're looking at him like I'm better than him. But no, we're the same, and we get treated the same if it comes down to situations with the police.
That's the truth.
So yeah, so it doesn't matter. I remember I was walking my dogs in the park by my house, and it was, I had come from work and it was late, and I said, let me go and walk them really quickly, and I had some food on the stove, and I had two standard poodles, so dogs that cost thousands of dollars, and I went in the park, and it happened to be after 10 o'clock. Probably 2 minutes after 10 o'clock. I promise you. Two cops came up to me first, and then they called backup. And they're like, well, we heard shooting around here. And I'm like, excuse me, look at me. I'm walking standard poodles that are mine, that I own.
Right.
Does it look like I just shot someone? Are you serious? But they actually held me and ended up giving me a ticket for being in the park after 10 o'clock, and I had to go and go to court, and it was embarrassing. And it was silly, in my opinion. But these are things that, regardless of your income bracket and all of that stuff, if you look like us, these are things that we all have to deal with.
Right.
So, okay, I'm gonna come down off the soapbox. I started getting hyped, but
But yeah, I mean, brother, one of the great things that you pointed out, like, even as a community, right? Even though me is like, oh, well, I'm a doctor and I have a PhD and I'm better than somebody else who looks differently, or that when you stand up in a crowd, you're not as clean cut, right? But at the same time, you had that experience of being stopped by the police. Oh yeah, there was shooting in your area. You're like, I'm walking what some people will say. I'm not gonna lie. I got friends on here watching. I have both black males and white women on, and they be like, I look like an Upper East Side white woman, whatever that means, and you can take from it whatever you want to take from it. But you like. But then at the same time, there's that reality check that brings you back like, no, like, I don't care what I thought in my head I looked like or who I thought I was better than. The reality is of when they see us, that brings up a certain reaction. And then now I have to deal with the reality of, that black boy that I look at in the mirror, that I either don't want to deal with or that's still challenging for me to deal with. Because let's just be honest, like sometimes there are just some of us who reach those levels and we no longer see that little black boy. We see somebody who has made it and who is better than. You had that experience, so and you live in Harlem, which was another great thing I knew about. So thank you, Deontay, on you, brother, about this. When they see us, if you saw it, what was your experience? You got two kids, and one of them is a young brother who's going to grow into a black man, and that could be scary for a father to deal with as a reality.
I mean, 110%. And I think that is the toughest part, for me, especially, I think we've all experienced things. I know I did at a young age, and I've always kind of been, you know, clean cut kind of guy. Both my parents are from the city and went to, Detroit public schools. And, at a young age, moved my brother and I out to the suburbs to go through that schooling, just to get, they tried to make sure we were getting better and better in terms of generationally. But even as a young man experiencing that, walking past, somebody that doesn't look like me and they clench their purse, and it's like, but I would think I'm one of the least looking threatening people that you would see. But, raising a young man, and I think that from a society standpoint, I don't know if, you know, things have changed too much, right? I think the same issues that were happening way back are happening now. I think that the 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 better part of what's going on now is that we have things like technology to capture images and video to hopefully, deter some things from happening. Unfortunately, sometimes that technology and that video doesn't mean much, right? We've seen things happen, and unfortunately, justice isn't necessarily served at all times. So raising a son and even a daughter in this environment is really hard for me. I always try to teach my son to speak to everybody equally and respectfully, and I'm showing them what professionalism looks like. And sooner than later, we're gonna have to have a conversation around complying and all these things. And um, it's a very tough spot to be in, and as somebody that's in my shoes, that's why I could just preach excellence. Everything that we do it in excellence, and know your why behind doing what you're doing. Because if not, I think if you get really sucked into the things that are going on and looking at, unfortunately, the ways other people still view us, and if you don't put a positive spin on it, or have some kind of hope for future, man, I think you again gonna be stuck in a spot we don't need to be in. So I'm all about advancement.
Right, right. One of the great things Derek said, I still get chills from the thought of that series. As a father, all he could
Mm,
see was his son. He could have been a Corey Wise.
yeah,
It's a hard reality check. Very much so.
yeah.
Very, very, very much so. Now, last but not least, brother Jonathan, Pastor Baker, you're on. Talk to us about what your experiences were when you watched that movie. How are you connecting and having conversations with Black and Brown brothers, kids who look up to you?
Um, you know, like the brothers, the gentleman before me said, man, it's crazy because I can identify, just off of appearance, and it's sad. It's very sad to me because I noticed even in the culture today, man, it's like Robert said, you can look, sophisticated, wear a suit and tie, all of those things, and then maybe you look like me now, like like with all of the ink and the different things, and either way it goes, we're both gonna get the same reaction once we run into the other of the police department, just because that's the way the justice system is set up right now, and um, I have a child as well, man, and a stepson, and I just always have to. I always have to remind myself to walk in love, man. I know it's hard to say, and I'm not giving you the cliche answer as a pastor, but the truth of the matter is, man, we're all created equal, in God's eyes, and I just always ask God for his protection, when I'm out and about and moving around in society, because this is a cruel world, and we face a lot of filthy things, man, just off of the way we look, you know what I mean? But the real issue has nothing to do with the skin color. It's all the issue of the heart. So I'm just praying for God to begin to touch the hearts of the culture that's coming up now, because, I hate to say it like this, but a lot of that, is instilled in the people that are before us, the older generation that are instilling that in the youth, so we can get the youth to understand, and they're kind of getting it right now, to understand that we are all created equal and that we should love each other no matter the color of our skin or where we come from and things of that nature. Then that old hateful mentality would die with that old generation, and that's what I'm really praying for, is for the love, God's love, to be incorporated in the culture of today, so that we won't have to deal with this in the coming generations.
Thanks. I mean, you hit it 100%. Is what I've been teaching as a mental health practitioner is the honest thing is we can get angry and we can fight and we can argue, but if we lead with love and trying to understand one another, then that's a message that kind of transcends race. It transcends all that other stuff, but it doesn't take away that feeling. So we gotta
No.
teach each other and work with how we're gonna process these feelings. Because in the moment, it's easily to
Yes.
like escalate out of control. Like, who are you? Who are you talking to me? I'm not some idiot.
Yes.
I've probably been pulled over. I'd be like, who do you think you talking to? I have over a
Yeah.
hundred $1,000 in student loan debt and more knowledge under this cap from books. And who are you to talk to me like this? I'm not some just random person off the street, but all they see is my black skin at the end of the day. They can,
That's it.
you know,
That's it.
and I'm not gonna always walk out of my house with a polo shirt on or with a button-up shirt. I'm gonna be me, a
Right.
little boy who grew up in the projects in Alabama. That's at the end of the
That's
day,
it.
that's it. And I'm gonna be true to who I am. I don't want to like dress up to pretend to look like the other. So I think that's a huge, huge thing. One of the things you talked about, Robert, is social media. And Deontay, you talked about social media. Do you guys think that social media has helped or has hurt us when you think about back in the 60s? So when I think about like one of my like people that I idolize is Dr. Martin Luther King. His birthday is one day after mine. I'm like, that man was a powerful man. He connected with people all over Selma, California, Washington, D.C., Massachusetts, Detroit to organize. And he didn't have Instagram. He didn't have Facebook. He didn't have Twitter. He didn't have all of these vehicles that we have. And I asked myself, right, have we been helped or have we been hurt by social media in terms of supporting one another, in terms of organizing for one another, in terms of having this community conversations and dialogue? So you start, Deontay.
Yeah, so I think that, social media in its purest form definitely allowed us an opportunity for the support mechanism. And I say that just like this, like me and you, Wesley, we got connected via Instagram, right?
Right.
Via looking at what one another we're doing, looking at how do we advance. When you look at the other brothers on this panel, the same way. Like I checked out Pastor Jay, I looked at the Wealthy page, and I'm like, these brothers are doing some awesome stuff. So I think that when we utilize as a true tool, it could be a great use for support and connectivity and building and again being conduits for change. Again, if it's not used the correct way, then we see the other side of it, right? We see people that are utilizing it for instant gratification, right? We're seeing people that are utilizing it for likes and all these things that don't really matter. So I think it could be a phenomenal tool for change. But again, we have to make sure we're tapping into it as such. But when I look at it from, again, compared to the 60s, the thing that I like about then is people really did pick up the phone and have real conversations, right? People did physically write letters to people showing gratitude and trying to organize things. People did get in their car and go to another destination to visit and build, right? So I think this kind of generation that's using social, they don't necessarily have the same amount of people skills, which is something that I definitely value from look at old school versus new school. But again, if we can almost utilize it as the best of both worlds, like, hey, Pastor Jay, I love what you're doing. I'm following you. I'm supporting your messages. And by the way, and when I'm in Atlanta in August, let's link up to do some lunch and figure out how we can advance one another some more, right? I think that's the kind of way we could utilize it to build in its purest form. And I think that if we do that, it's going to be powerful how quickly we can change some things. Because I look at the dialogue we're having today, it's a powerful one. You
Right.
getting four different perspectives on some powerful topics, and what we could do via this tool versus trying to coordinate in person and do that. Again, we advanced it and moved the needle, where it needs to be a little bit.
Right, right. What are the so Pastor Baker, I want you to talk about it, but I want you to take it from a different perspective. So one of the things that I think that the 60s had was black churches. And that's how they spread these messages about organizing, about what was happening in Detroit, what was happening in Boston, Massachusetts, what was happening in Texas. And being from someone who is in a black Greek letter organization, one of the things I valued about before social media was, oh, if we want to go hang with the bros from Fort Valley State, or we want to go hang with the bros all the way down in Miami. It was a road trip, so it was a family experience. We got in the car, a piece of shit car, and we made the trek for 8-9 hours. That's how we supported one another, right? So, how do you think social media has impacted, helped, hurt, and how is the black church or the black spiritual experience making that work?
Well, one thing I do when I love the way Deontay worded it, man. He worded it perfectly. The way we're having this conversation right now is a beautiful expression of how social media can definitely connect brilliant minds and brilliant thought patterns and allow us to really have a conversation and set up things to help further a movement and further the community. So I love it from that aspect as he touched on and highlighted. But also touching back on what you said about the 60s, black churches, they were very involved and people would just spread the word via, going to other churches, other locations, and just spreading the movement about what was going on in different cities and different states versus social media now. Like he said, man, social media, a lot of people have become lazy, man, and the people skills have fell off. And as far as being on the spiritual side of things, I can definitely see that because, you'll have people that might live in the same city as the church where they're watching online, but they won't get out of their beds and make that commitment to go there for an hour and a half, 2 hours to sit and get a word, in person from the same fellowship that they'll click on their YouTube and live stream or click on the website and watch, videos of it, and I guess that just goes back to the convenience factor. What's convenient isn't always what's best, because there's a certain level of comfortability that we in this millennial generation have to overcome in order to really pursue things on another level. And speaking from me as a pastor, social media vocally supported me big time when I first began the church, but physically you couldn't see the same type of commitment in actual numbers that I saw versus on the likes and the comments and the reposts and the shares and so on and so forth. So like Deontay touched on, man, I think we really got to get back in the habit of, really showing up and building with other people and really showing up out of state and saying, hey man, I'll be back in New York, like you said, in August or September. And when I touch down, Robert and Doctor, we can link and really build with one another and see what we can further, what we can advance. Or I know you might have this conference going on and I got this going on in Atlanta. If you could come down here and speak, that'd be a beautiful opportunity. Like, people don't do that, man. We just so focused on it right here, the instant gratification of, well, if I post this video with this type of content, I get this amount of views and this amount of likes and X amount of minutes. And we got to get back to those people skills, man, because the people in the old days, like you said, they ain't have this. So that's all they had was their character and their vocal ability to be able to express themselves to one another and really take a chance. Like driving to go see somebody, flying to go see somebody and build, that's a chance that you're taking. Like, it's not the same versus picking up the phone or picking up Instagram and saying, hey, I shoot in a DM. He might accept me, he might reject me. It don't really matter. I didn't put in no effort, not much. I just picked up the phone. But if I take time out to go to these places, that really shows forth effort. And I feel like relationships are way more important than money and more important than following.
Yes, brother. One of the great things you said is relationships. That being a huge part of like my message. And I saved this for the last person who has like Robert. You have 23,000 followers, right, brother? And you are really, really popping on social media. People have really connected to you and connected to your message. One of the great things you say is my people, my people, my people. My brother, you start that. That's your tagline. That's what you've done in terms of connecting. What are your thoughts about social media, good, bad, versus the 60s, and how are you making it work to like either further the message and still at the same time connect to your community?
Yeah, so I think that Deontay and Pastor Jonathan both made really good points in what they're saying about social media, because social media, I use it as a vehicle to reach people as well as to further my business. But that whole my people, my people, my people thing. So like with your question in, the 60s is just like my people, you know, like, and so many people they feel that from the my people, and they connect with the wealthy guy, and they understand that what the wealthy guy is doing is much bigger than what you see. And I think the beauty of the my people, my people, my people is like we can clearly relate to it. But then there's other groups that can relate to it as well and tell me how much they love, you know, when I say the my people, but they understand that I'm building a community. And even when I do hit, you know, the next level of follower numbers, I always say we hit, right? Because I couldn't do it without the people. I couldn't do it without the actual followers, and my message wouldn't be heard if those people weren't there. So for me, social media is a great thing in terms of spreading my message. But then, you know, to Pastor Jonathan's point of, you know, people doing things for the likes and the followers and this and that and the other, sometimes I cringe when I'm on social media, because a lot of times the most popular people are the celebrities. The most popular people are the people who are making fun of, for lack of a better term, the hood, right? Like, these people have massive followings by doing, you know, putting on a wig and imitating, you know, their how they see black women, you know, in low income neighborhoods and things like that. So I think from that perspective, I'm just like, oh, why is it that someone, you know, like Deontay or Pastor Jonathan or even you, Wesley, why is it that the people who are really trying to affect change and have such a positive message, those are the people that people don't necessarily, they rather see jokes, right? Of ghetto jokes, you know, than to follow people with a positive message. So I think that I've been fortunate in that, you know, I've grown the following. But if you think about it, a lot of it too is based off of appearance, right? So people, they gravitate towards celebrity, and they gravitate towards name brand clothes, and they gravitate towards luxury, and these are the things that are priorities for them. So, you know, even though I get a lot of followers, I lose a lot too, you know, because once people see that my message is more than fur coats and custom suits, you know, they out of there, because they all they wanted to hear about was luxury clothes,
Right.
you know. So I think it's a, you know, social media can be a good and a bad thing, and I do think that it's important for us to be able to see that spectrum of you know, the you and the me, as well as the comedians who put on the wigs and do the ghetto jokes. But I just wish that we would, you know, look more towards the people who are trying to make a positive impact in the lives of others.
Right, brother. Something you pointed on was about that the likes, the followers, and that being sometimes like the thing that people look at, right, in terms of clout or. And I've thought about it from a
Right.
mental health perspective. I know for some people, they want to escape the reality of what their everyday experience is. So if they want to, you know, escape that and not think about that and have a laugh to feel better, sometimes that may be looking at a brother who puts on a wig, who imitates or the ghetto fabulous black woman, or whatever's popular, you know, in the moment. Thank you, Kenyatta, our brother, our frat. But yeah, in the moment, they just want to escape that, or they get caught up into that because it's funny, and they don't have to think about the reality. And it's so many brothers out here who are doing that, but at the same time who are doing this, which is why I chose you specific brothers.
Yeah.
Not only because of your expertise, but because you stay true to your message. You don't go after the like just because creating content that's not true to who you are or true to who the spirit tells you that you should be in your community. So I want to thank all three of you for doing that on your social media platforms, because those who do unlike or do not follow because they think your feed is follow. I'm one of those people who do like, because I do think your feed is popping. I do think your message is important. I do think what you say is valuable. I do think what you say is significant in a day and age where we put out a movie and brothers and sisters can't even watch it because they can't think of the reality of a Central Park 5 actually happening. They'd rather get caught up, in the Shirlene Shuffle, you know. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're overtime, by the way. So please, please, please close with your thought. Robert, check this brother out on Instagram. Go ahead and close, Robert, for yourself.
So, again, thank you for having me. The thing that I'll leave with is that you have to be good here to look good out here. If you're not right in here, it's going to show. You ain't going to be right on the outside. So make sure you right in here before you worry about all this outside.
Right, right. And you, Deontay?
Yeah, I guess to leave out, man, let's be the change we want to see in the community. Let's take our finances to the next level. If you haven't talked to a financial professional, definitely do it. Again, if we take what the good book says, write down a vision, make it plain. And then again, you have a building block to go on, man. Let's build this generational wealth. And again, one thing, Wesley, we talked about before, man, let's do the right things and set things up for our families. Let's get rid of things like GoFundMe to take care of funeral expenses. Let's
Right,
deal with real
right,
conversations, right? So, again, that's my challenge to everybody. Again, it's the best time is now. Again, put that foot forward so you won't be in the same spot.
right. And Pastor Jonathan Baker, I just want you to know I have scored brownie points with my grandparents because they know I haven't been to church in a month of Sundays. So the fact that I have a pastor on my show, they probably going to call me after this and say, God, hallelujah, for our grandson. Came back to the fold. But Pastor Jonathan Baker, close with what your thoughts are about how men, whether no matter what color we are, can live and be healthy spiritually or whatever you think we should do. Jonathan, are you there, brother? Did we lose
Oh,
Jonathan?
my bad, brother. I'm sorry. No, I'm here. I was saying, I definitely want to say thank you for having me, brother. Thank you. It's an honor. It's definitely an honor. I love what you're doing. I love what each and every one of you guys are doing, man. Definitely, everybody's genuine. I can definitely feel the genuine love. Everybody loves what they're doing, and I just want to piggyback off of what Robert said and just elaborate a little bit further with the scriptural reference. He said, if you're not right in here, nothing else matters. And I preached today about time and season, and one of the passages I spoke on was 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7, and it says that man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at our heart. So we definitely want to make sure that we're right in our hearts, you know what I mean? Because, we can put forth our best foot forward, but if internally we're not right, within, everything we do is futile, because at the end of the day, we all have to go somewhere at the end. And so I just want to make sure that everybody remembers, keep God first. If you don't know, what you need to do spiritually, find a spiritual covering. Don't go just where the numbers are and where it's popular at. Go where you feel led and where your heart is led, because where you feel led at and where it's organic and genuine, that's where you're going to really get something, man. And I just want to say I love everybody that tuned in and showing nothing but love and blessings, man. Keep y'all all uplifted in prayer.
All right. All right, brothers. Thank you so much for your time. Like I said, we're over. Thank everyone for checking in. So I will talk to you all later. All right, brothers. Have a good one.
Sounds good. God bless you.
Hey,
Happy
thanks,
Father's Day.
Wesley. Hey, happy Father.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for the comments. Thank you for tuning in. I knew this was going to be an incredibly long episode, kind of. I'll be honest, I'll own it. But I think it was a conversation that needed to start. I think there are so many people that needed to hear this today that I just couldn't ignore it. For the people who didn't need to hear it, hey, you know what? Hopefully next week you'll hear have a conversation that you do need to hear. Something I always say, life is a journey. You know, it's not a destination. We're going to have our ups and our downs, and we're going to have our great moments in our life where we're championing, and we're going to have moments in life where we're like it just doesn't seem like anything is going to go right. And at the end of it all, if you remain steadfast, if you remain honest to who you are, who that voice is inside, versus what other people say, you're going to be amazing. Having an amazing week. I love you guys. I can't wait to see you all next week on the Nurses Talk Show. We're going to have on Nurse Jenny is going to be back, and Nurse Miriam is on the show. So have an amazing week. I love you. Go check these brothers out. They're doing an amazing thing. Y'all keep living a great life and have a fabulous Father's Day. We dancing,